Please note I will be performing this lab in Hyper-V. You will not be performing it in ACE-IT Labs. However, you will follow along with your worksheet, and in this lab and going forward in labs where I am performing it in Hyper-V, not only will you be answering questions, but you will also need to be taking screenshots. Let's go ahead and proceed. 70-740 Lab 5, Implementing Data Deduplication. We're going to do a couple exercises in this where we're going to create a storage pool, except this time we're going to use parity when we do our disk creation. We'll also be implementing data deduplication, and then in our lab challenge we're going to be looking at how we monitor data deduplication. Now I will forewarn you, there have been instances where I've seen the configuration of our virtual disk fail using the GUI but be successful using PowerShell. So we'll find out what happens, but just to forewarn you. And we're going to get logged in here. We'll get our lab started. So our first exercise is creating a storage pool. In this exercise, we're going to create a storage pool, and we're going to use that for data deduplication. Different from the storage pool we created in our Lab 4, in this exercise we're going to be using parity layout instead of a mirror layout. To improve the performance and reliability of the disk system used on Windows Server 2016, you can use storage pools and storage spaces to use disk space from multiple disks. So we've logged into our LUN SVR3. We're going to go ahead and we're going to select File and Storage Services. And under Volumes, let's select Disks. So we can see our 32 gig disk. We see our primordial, we're going to select storage pools, and we can see our primordial storage that's available. Let's go ahead and we're going to right click where it says primordial, and we're going to say new storage pool. We're going to click next. We're going to name this storage pool 01. We've only got our one set of available disks that we can select, so we're going to click next. We're going to go ahead and we're going to select all three of the disks, and we're going to click next, and then we're going to click create. Now as you can see, I'm doing this in Hyper-V. Because of the fact that we're doing the storage pool and we're working with the multiple disks, we can't do this in ACE-IT Labs. However, I still want you to take screenshots. So I would like all the students to take a screenshot of my current screen right now and paste that into step number 10 in your worksheet. Now that you've gotten your screenshot, we're going to go ahead and click close. We're going to now right click on our storage pool 01, and let's see if we can make a new virtual disk. We only have one storage pool we can select from. We're going to click next. We're going to click next. We're going to name it Virtual Disk 2. And click next. Under Enclosure Resiliency, we're going to click next. Now here in Lab 4 we selected mirror, but we're going to select parity. And let's answer our first question. To protect against a single disk failure, use at least 3 disks. To protect against 2 disk failures, use at least 7 disks. So question number 1, what is the minimum number of disks needed for parity storage layout? Well, if we want to have at least single disk failure, we have to use at least 3 disks. The answer to question number 1 is 3. If you've answered that, let's go ahead and click next. On our provisioning type, we're going to maintain fixed and click next. On our size, we're going to specify 32 gigabytes and click next. Now let's click create and see what we get. A failure. Okay, so I kind of expected that. Let's go ahead and we're going to click close, and we're going to run a PowerShell command. Let's go ahead. We're going to start. We're going to right click on PowerShell and run as administrator. And we're going to run the commands to create that same new virtual disk, but using PowerShell. So let's do new virtual disk using tab complete. That helps to eliminate any typing errors. And we're looking for hyphen storage pool friendly name. Tab a couple times. There it is. We're going to call this, the storage pool that we're pulling from is storage pool 01. Now, what do we want to name our virtual disk? What's the friendly name going to be? Virtual disk 02. Now we need to specify the size that we're going to be using, and that size, tab complete, is going to be 32 GB for gigabytes. What type of resiliency did we select? It was parity, remember? And then what is our physical disk redundancy? Well, we can have a single disk failure, so we're going to do PHY for physical disks redundancy, and let's see if this will work. Looks like it will. And there we are. We've created our new virtual disk. Let's go ahead and we're going to go back over. Let's refresh this. We're going to rescan. There we can see it there. Let's rescan just to make sure. Now, it may or may not be online. Our next step after we've created that, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to get a screenshot of this. Actually, tell you what, let's do this. Here is our virtual disk that we've created. Take a screenshot and paste this into step number 22. This shows what we've done. If you've got your screenshot, I'm going to go ahead and click cancel. Keep in mind, if you didn't get your screenshot quick enough, you could always pause the video, take your screenshot, and then restart your video. The next thing we're going to do is we need to create a new volume. So let's see, that's for a new virtual disk, but what we can do is we can right click and say new volume. We're going to click next. We're going to use LUN, it's on here, right? Now it says, hey, no related virtual disks exist. Where is it? We know there's a virtual disk there. Let's go ahead and cancel this wizard. We're going to go back over to here. Let's go back to properties. Well, it looks like everything's there. What do we need to do? Let's take a look at our disks. See that virtual disk that we created. It's set as unknown and it's read only. We might need to change that. There we go. Let's bring this online and see what that does for us. So you know what, this might still be connected because remember we did the Lab 4 exercise where we used the iSCSI to do an initiator and a target. Let's do this. We're going to bring it online on this server because it may still be wanting to see a connection for it to another server. We're going to do that. There we are. Okay, now it's not read-only anymore. We're going to go ahead and we're going to again rescan our storage. We'll refresh it just to take a look. And now let's go down to our storage pools. Okay, well this all still looks the same, but let's right click and see if we can do a new volume now. We do next. There it is. Now it shows up. Okay, so we're going to click next. And okay, and so they're telling us to bring it online again. That's okay. Let's go ahead and do that. Now we can specify the size. We're going to specify 20 gigabytes. We click next. Remember, things aren't always going to work the way you think they're going to work. Be flexible. Adapt. Adapt to the situation. Do your research. Do some lookups. Check out TechNet on Microsoft. Microsoft has a website that lists every single PowerShell command. How did I find out what I needed to do for that PowerShell command? Well, if I do this, get-help, and then I type in new virtual and tab complete, and I say I want examples, and I press enter, it shows me exactly what to do. Here's an example to create a 100 gig virtual disk using default settings. Thin provisioned, 3-way mirror, 2-column mirror, using storage tiers, remember that. And here creating a dual parity space, well, we did it with single parity because we only had 3 disks. That's almost the exact same command we just ran. That's how you find things. Now, maybe you don't have that updated help. So what you do is you type in the command update help, and that will retrieve the latest help information from Microsoft. Now, I don't have our NAT router running, so I can't run this right now. I already did it to make sure that we could see this information. So, what drive letter are we going to assign? We're going to allow it to assign the drive letter D. We're going to use our NTFS for the file system. We're going to label this storage pool. And we're going to click next. On our enable deduplication page, we're going to go ahead and we're going to leave this just the same way as it is right now. All right, we're going to click next, and then we're going to click create on the confirmation page. So understand, we could have enabled the data deduplication right then and there. But what happens if you want to go back in later on and say, hey, we want to now enable data deduplication? We're going to take a look at that in our next exercise. So now that we've got everything created, let's go ahead and refresh. Our view still looks the same. Let's go ahead and select our disks. Still pretty much looks the same, doesn't it? Let's go ahead and with the storage pool selected, let's go ahead and take another screenshot and paste that into step number 31. Okay, go ahead and pause your video while you get that screenshot, and we're going to continue on. So let's move on to our second exercise. And just as a side note, remember how when we created that disk, it gave us an option to enable data deduplication right then and there? That's because I was working on this system earlier and preparing our lab and had already installed the data deduplication role. What I've done is I've gone ahead and I've removed that role so that we can do this second exercise and roll right through it. So our second exercise is implementing data deduplication. We're going to apply data deduplication to the new volume that we just created. Now keep in mind that part of your planning process, and everything we do involves planning. Plan 3 times, do it once. So as part of your planning process, you may have said, okay, prior to creating these volumes, we're going to go ahead and install the role. So you may have had that option as you were creating that volume, that partition. But let's say this is a server that had storage already existing, and now we're going to go back in and we want to enable that role. Well, introduced with our Windows Server, and actually it started with Windows Server 2012, we've got now the option to install data deduplication, and what it does is it reduces disk space by removing duplicate data to preserve storage capacity. Data deduplication organizes data into small chunks. It identifies all the duplicates, and maintains a single copy of each chunk. Data deduplication is ideal for general shared folders such as public and home folders, offline folders, images, software deployment shares, and VHD libraries that store those virtual hard disk files. On our LUN SVR3, we're going to go ahead and we're going to select Manage and then Add Roles and Features. We're going to click Next 3 times. And on our roles, we're going to expand File and Storage Services. We're going to expand File and iSCSI Services, and we're going to select Data Deduplication. We're going to click Next. We're going to click Next, and we're going to install. Now this should take about 45 seconds or so. I'm going to pause the video while it gets installed, and I'll be back with you in just a moment. Okay, I don't know that it even took 45 seconds, but that's better than you sitting there watching my screen go by, right? Let's go ahead and get another screenshot, and you're going to paste this into step number 8. You can go ahead and pause the video while you got your screenshot, and we're going to go ahead and click Close now. And now under our volumes, under File and Storage Services, I'm going to select Volumes. And we can see well, it could be, if we had a DVD mounted, it would have created it as drive E, which is what shows in your instructions, but we don't, so it's drive D. So we're going to right click on that, and we're going to select Configure Data Deduplication. The first thing we're going to need to do, well, we can't enable data deduplication if it's disabled, right? We're going to select General Purpose File Server. Let's answer question number 2. How old does a file have to be before it is deduplicated? Well, look at your screen. What's the second line say? Duplicate files older than 3 days. So 3 days after a file or files are written is the earliest that they will be examined for data deduplication. The answer to question 2 is 3 days. Now we could modify that if we wanted, but you want to make sure that you're working with data that's going to stay there. There's no point in deduplicating data that's going to get removed within a day. All right, we're going to go ahead and we're going to click OK. Before that, however, let's take a look at our other options here. We could say there are specific folders and the files that are contained in them that we want to exclude from data deduplication. So remember in our lesson we talked about that data deduplication, there's no benefit to using it if you've got encryption, because it won't deduplicate encrypted files. Well, let's say there were specific folders on this volume that did contain encrypted data. You could exclude them from that while allowing the rest of the data in this volume to be deduplicated. We can also set a specific schedule for when we want it to run. You can actually create 2 schedules. Let's go ahead and click OK. And we are now going to right click on our D volume and select Properties. We can see that, well, has it been 3 days yet? No. So data deduplication has not even run yet. Hasn't even looked at the contents yet. If there were files here, it would still wait 3 days. But we can see that deduplication is enabled. So far there's no savings, and the rate of data deduplication is 0%. In our lesson I showed you a live example where we saw a 60% savings in storage capacity through the use of data deduplication. Let's go ahead and get a screenshot of your screen and paste that into step number 15. If you've got that screenshot, let's go ahead and click OK. And we're going to move into our lab challenge. And in this we're going to monitor our data deduplication. So we're going to use Windows PowerShell to monitor our data deduplication implementation. To understand how much disk space you are saving and get the status of your deduplication jobs, you must run the get-dedupe status, get-dedupe metadata, and get-dedupe job Windows PowerShell commands. Let's take a look at those. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to click Start. We're going to go to PowerShell. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to run get dedupe status and press enter. So here we can see a similar to view, but now this also would show us the number of files that have been optimized. Let's take a look at our get dedupe metadata. Here we can see specific information, average chunk size, median size, a lot more detailed information about that volume. Now, let's run the last command, which is get dedupe job. Nothing appears. Why did nothing appear? What did we talk about in your lesson? Well, get dedupe job will only show you those currently running deduplication jobs or ones that are in a queue to run. Since there is nothing in the queue or nothing currently running, we simply returned back to a prompt. Let's go ahead and get a screenshot and paste that into step number 5. I'm going to go ahead, now that you've gotten your screenshot, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close PowerShell. And I'm going to go about resetting the server. And what we're going to do is we're going to delete the volumes and the drives that we created. What we want to do is, the reason that we're doing this is we want to ensure the system's clean for future labs. So we're going to basically reset the system back to our quote-unquote default settings. We're going to go back into our file and storage services. We're going to select storage pools. And under our disks, we're going to go ahead and we're going to right-click the virtual disk 02. And the first thing we need to do is we need to take it offline. All right. Now, let's go down to our storage pool. I'm going to right-click on the virtual disk 02 and we're going to say delete virtual disk. We're going to click yes. Our virtual disk is gone. In storage pools, let's go ahead and right-click the storage pool and say delete storage pool. We're going to click OK, and we're back to the primordial disk. We're done. Thank you for reviewing 70-740 Lab 5. Please be sure to save your changes and upload your worksheet to Dropbox. Thank you.